So I had other things I was planning to do, but apparently God wants me to do this. The real reason people love anime. Disclaimer: I am not an anime fan. I was, but my tastes have gotten so picky over the years that to say I love all anime would be intellectually false. I find myself drawn to 90s anime, and even then I only like a very small percentage. I will mainly be talking about said percentage, but if you are an anime fan, I believe what I say here may encompass what you believe about anime too. I make no such promises, though. Anime. Anime. What can be said about it? It's got parents confused and concerned, and teens lap it up. The backlash against anime has been so severe at times that even pastors get on TV and herald Pokemon Go as a tool of Satan.
These Pokemon creatures are like virtual cyber demons.
Yes, digital demons.
Digital demons.
I disagree with him on that one, but I've got to extend some measure of grace towards my fellow Christians. But what exactly happened here? Why the backlash? Why the popularity at all? Well, after years of contemplation, because I walk my dog every day, I believe I may have come up with an answer to the question, why do people love anime? I was one of the Pokemon kids. Along Digimon, Monster Rancher, and oddly enough Escaflowne, my sister and I watched the Pokemon cartoon faithfully. Until my parents cut off our cable funding, in which case my sister and I dove headfirst into video games and never looked back. Mario Party 3 was the best! But even after all those years, my fascination with anime never lessened. I found myself oddly drawn to shows like Naruto and Bleach. There were summer nights where my sister, my friend, and I would watch Avatar: The Last Airbender until 1 a.m., in which case we would take a break by walking over to the nearby gas station for junk food. We called them Mac runs. But there was something wrong here. I mean, I liked more than just Japanese animation, which is what anime is short for, animation. What was going on here? I think it really clicked for me when Mother's Basement put out his video where he explained that anime is an art movement not bound to any designated country. But then why the need for this cultural revolution? Why did it start in Japan? Why did anime get so popular in the first place? To explain that fully, I need to give a bit of a history lesson. I know, bear with me here. It's important, I promise. Allow me, if you will, to bring you to the end of the Second World War. It's the 1940s. Men have just come home, battered and bruised, some without limbs or even deeper scars. Some don't come home at all. Women embrace their heroes, relieved to see their fathers, sons, and husbands home after many sleepless nights. They hug, they weep, both still traumatized from the horrors of war. But then, what's this? Their son is reading a comic book, and not just any comic book, but a comic book with excessive violence. Men and women getting brutally maimed, Batman holding a gun, the horror, the tragedy, the outrage. Something must be done to protect our youth. Sound familiar? Now, to put this in the proper context, what's important to note was that there was no formal rating system at the time for comic books and the like. So kids could just wander over to a magazine rack and buy gory comics for 10 cents. And second, for those of you who don't live in this part of the world, North Americans can be ridiculously overprotective of their children sometimes. Sometimes. But I digress. And so, the comic book warnings. In the year 1946, angry parents rally together with concerned teachers and burn stacks of comic books in the square. They would not allow their impressionable youth to be corrupted by the evil vials of comic books.
It is my opinion, without any reasonable doubt and without any reservation, that comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
Being a fan of comics in general, I found myself quite antagonistic towards Dr. Wortham and the cultural revolution he contributed to. On paper, I was very much against the censorship of comic books. However, in looking up stuff for this review, I found that, yeah, some of this stuff was pretty bad. I mean, this is the worst I'll show you, but some of it's actually really gross. As a person who has a ridiculously low horror and gore tolerance, I'm not entirely opposed to some of this being censored, especially if it means getting it out of the hands of children. That being said, what bothers me most is the outrage took things too far and was ultimately misplaced. Because at the end of the day, the problem wasn't with comic books, but with human sin. Yeah, these guys probably shouldn't have been making comic books like this, but it takes two to tango, people. These kids shouldn't have been buying comics like this either, and I bet you they knew it. I've found that over the years, the media you choose to consume says a lot about you as a person. That's why my tastes have become so picky. So, people found juvenile delinquents with sick, disgusting comic books? Of course they would! Sick and twisted people are drawn to sick and twisted things like moth to a flame. Graphic comic books were only a symptom of the problem. And what happened in the 1940s is that parents had trouble accepting that children can enjoy evil just as much as adults can. Sin has been around since Adam and Eve, and instead of trying to understand that, they use comic books as a scapegoat, either as a means to shirk responsibility, or as an outlet for their anger and denial. Yes, the comic book industry needed a rating system, but parents also needed to try and understand their children's point of view. But instead, Batman went from using a gun to Bat Baby. Yes, that's a thing. Google it. Superman got a whole bunch of animal friends. And why not? After all, cartoons are only for kids. And that is why I will never complain about violence in the video game industry. Because the 1940s were when the angry parents won. Have you ever wondered why, after all these years, that mentality still persists? That even after all the attempts of the comic book industry to break free from that mold, comic books are still seen as something to grow out of? Why DC and Marvel are finding more success with their live-action movies than they are with their actual books? It's because, in North America, any story drawn with your hands is automatically relegated to children. And you bet that has bled into the animation industry. So why do people love anime? Because it took animation seriously. Here comes this country, absolutely in love with American media that developed its own animation scene completely independent from the long history of comic book censorship. With North American cartoons, I always get this sense that animators are constantly looking over their shoulders, always worrying about what they can and can't get away with. Japanese animation, on the other hand, is almost completely oblivious to all this. Sure, they do have their own censorship laws to some degree, like how much blood can be shown on TV, but in Japan, if you want to tell a sex joke, you tell a sex joke. The Japanese don't feel like they have to limit themselves because they have an adult animation scene that's in the public eye. And there's problems with that too, but when Japanese animators are making kids' cartoons, they're doing it because they want to make kids' cartoons, not because they have to. The freedom of expression has made Japanese anime fearless. So why do people love anime? Because it reintroduced North Americans to the lost niche genre of the animated drama. Whenever the complaint comes up that kids shouldn't be watching anime, I want to say, fine, then give me something better. As a Christian, I really don't approve of a lot of stuff that's in anime. I could go for a TV show where there aren't so many obligatory boob and panty shots. That stereotype exists for a reason as much as I hate it. Japan has a real problem with pornography. So you don't want me to watch that? Fine. Give me something better. And at times, we have. Do you remember Prince of Egypt? Do you remember this?
Hush now, my baby, be still, love, don't cry. Sleep as you're rocked by the stream. Sleep and remember my last lullaby. So I'll be with you when you dream.
And this? Or this? Read the comments on some of these videos and people say that even though they're atheists, they've watched the movie like 10 times. People want this! And the fact that I go back and re-watch snippets of that movie is a testament in itself. And I'm not the only one. Also, Prince of Egypt has this totally underrated prequel sequel that you should totally check out. It's a great movie even though it's a lot lower key. Just watch it. And think about it. When was the last time you saw a Hollywood animated feature film that challenged you as much as Prince of Egypt? I mean intentionally. Avatar: The Last Airbender and even Teen Titans came close, and they had large followings to them too. And look how the industry treated them. But why not live action, you may ask? After all, if they want to be taken seriously, they should have just used real actors in the first place. You really learned nothing since the 1940s, have you? Okay, sarcasm aside, but some stories are better told in animation than they are in live action. A lesson that Disney is learning very, very slowly. It's only within recent years that CGI has been able to recreate anything remotely realistic. And can you really imagine this being done in live action? Or this? Or even this? I rest my case. So why do people love anime? Because it took its audience seriously. Remember Pokemon, the first movie? That came out during the height of Pokemon's popularity. They could have had Pikachu dancing on screen for 90 minutes and no one would care. It would still sell like hotcakes. This is what we got instead.
August 6th. Today my colleagues will reach the site where an ancient civilization may have created a shrine to Mew, the most powerful Pokemon to have ever existed, now believed to be extinct.
Wow. Like, as an adult, I can clearly see the Miyazaki inspiration going on here, but this is the work of someone who cared. Someone's heart and soul went into this. People deliberately went above and beyond for Pokemon, the first movie! And this didn't end here, by the way. Both the second and third Pokemon movies display animation that is just as masterful as this one. When was the last time SpongeBob got such royal treatment? When was the last time anybody cared enough to give SpongeBob this royal treatment? Or Teen Titans? I am so sorry. That's why people love anime. And on the bright side, things are looking up. The perception of animation wasn't nearly as rigid as it was even 20 years ago. And the people who grew up loving anime are now getting old enough to make their own. I certainly hope to, when the time is right. So the next time you cast a skeptical eye towards a fan of My Hero Academia or whatever else they're playing nowadays, I hope you'll stop and consider the real reason people love anime.